Hi there. Welcome to NewsTalker, the news talk show of Southern Arizona with the papers of WIC Communications. I'm Matt Hickman, managing editor from the Herald Review Media in Sierra Vista, joined by our sister papers with Tom Bodis, managing editor from the Eastern Arizona Courier, Dan Shearer, managing editor of the Green Valley News, Manuel Coppola, publisher of the Nogales International. Gentlemen, welcome. We
Hi,
are,
Matt.
we are just over a month away from Election Day. So let's start talking about it. There's a lot of talk about the personalities and the candidates and the various races. But one thing we want to focus on today is the propositions. There's 13 of them, which has made the ballot incredibly long this year. Things from everything from voting to abortions to border law. So let's get right down to it and just kind of start from the top and kind of get everybody's thoughts on how these are going to play and how they're playing in our neighborhoods. Uh, Dan, you want to talk a little bit about Prop 133, about primary elections and how candidates become eligible?
Yeah, and you need to talk about Prop 133 and Prop 140 because they both deal with primary elections. So 133 would pretty much leave things as they are, and it would enshrine this in the state constitution. That's why it's on the ballot. So they want primary elections to be partisan and just like they are right now. Then you go down to Prop 140, and this is it would be a single primary for everybody, and basically regardless of the party, either the top two or four or six would go through to the general election. It hasn't been determined yet, and it wouldn't be determined for another year if this goes through. Now, this has been tested already in California, Washington, and Alaska with varying results. I would check that out if I were the viewers right now and see what they think. But let's just say it like it is. The Republicans want 133 to get through to keep things as they are. It's the Democrats who want the single primary for all. It would actually diminish the power and influence of the two parties out there, and it would force candidates to actually kind of play to both sides, and that's really what has gotten them a lot of traction thus far in these other states. But certainly worth taking a look at both of those. But they are competing ballot measures.
Yeah, I was in Alaska when they approved ranked choice voting. How close are we to ranked choice voting if this fails in Arizona? Because it's supposed to protect moderates was kind of the idea of it.
Right, and I think that ranked choice voting is something that's out there, but it hasn't really gotten a whole lot of traction. But this would, in a sense, kind of push us in that direction. So as we tinker with the election system, makes some people very nervous, and others say, "Yeah, we're due for a change."
Okay. Why don't we skip on down to 135, governor emergency powers, which would limit the powers of the governor. As I understand it, this is kind of a fallout from COVID and people feeling like, Governor Powers created too many mask mandates and things like that. Is there anybody have any thoughts on this one? Manuel, you think this one has a shot?
It might have a shot because there was a sense that former Governor Ducey overstepped during the pandemic, and so I think that'll give a little bit of traction. But I don't have a sense of where this thing's going to go.
Yeah, it does seem like.
I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. I mean, literally every governor in America overstepped during COVID. So I mean, it's like it was pretty much unprecedented what we were dealing with. So I'm not sure that we aren't using a limited sample size of crises to decide whether this is the best decision to make at this point or not. But I know it's all very partisan motivated. So.
And that's a great point, Tom, because a lot of the 13 ballot measures are driven by partisan politics. And on this one, this would really terminate the emergency powers granted to the governor 30 days after said emergency. And then if there were certain stipulations, it could continue. But if you remember, we're in Pima County here, and Pima County definitely was opposed to what the state was doing, but the town I live in, Sahuarita, liked what the state was doing, so they were in favor of the state mandates, but they were opposed to the ones in the county. I mean, it really just became kind of a hot mess. So I know that this is a chance to kind of even the score a little bit with what Governor Ducey did back then, but as you point out, it might be have been presented to us based on really it's, do we really have a big problem? Is there really a problem?
Well,
Right.
it did become a problem back then, and so I think this helps. In my personal view, I think it helps maintain that mechanism to ensure checks and balances in government versus the executive just running off on his own and really no power to rein him in. You never know, how extreme that can get.
And I'll tell you, I would really encourage people to study up on these. You do not want to be reading the really boring and really unclear ballot measures as they're going to be presented on the ballot. You want to do some homework ahead of time because these are some big questions, and you don't want to be just voting willy-nilly off of what you're seeing that day. Because I've read the actual what you're going to see on the ballot. It's really hard to figure out what these things are.
Well,
Good point.
piggybacking that, I would encourage people to review the publicity pamphlets from the Secretary of State's office because it gives a pretty good overview, pros and cons, and that's all posted on the Secretary of State's website. So,
Yeah, and jumping ahead to 136 is kind of an ironic one because it would be about ballot measures and what it takes to get a ballot measure on the ballot. Kind of ironic in that we have so many this year. This would make it harder. Is this one, Dan? You think this is one that could actually get some traction, if only because people are going to be exhausted from voting on 13 of them this time?
That's a good question because actually, let me go back to 134. This is the ballot measures, and then the one you were discussing was actually challenges to ballot measures. So right now, if a citizen wants to get something on the ballot, a ballot measure on there, they have to collect, I think it's 10% of the total number of statewide voters for governor in the previous election. They have to get 10% statewide. This would now require them to get that 10% from each of the state's 30 legislative districts. And so, and again, this was put on there by the Republicans in an effort to thwart left-leaning ballot measures. And so I'll give you an example here. Tom, up in your area, which Graham County is pretty conservative, to try to get 10% of the signatures for something is going to be really difficult. And most of our rural areas in Arizona are conservative. And so now this would require these groups to, first of all, spread out among 15 counties rather than just hit the big metro areas and get the 10% of signatures they need. But it would require them to spread out. They need more people, and they need a lot of time in these conservative districts. So if people are reading carefully and really considering what this might mean, I'm very curious out of all the props about this one, which direction will this go?
Yeah, it's interesting. Speaking of partisan things, where things have kind of flip-flopped, we have 137, which was brought mostly from the left and by Democrats in response to rulings they didn't like in the conservative Arizona Supreme Court, especially the 1864 abortion ruling. So this would basically give the voters power to remove judges. Manuel, what are your thoughts on this one? Do you think this one has a shot?
I've got nothing for you on this one, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And what do you think about this one?
Well, it would in essence end term limits for like state Supreme Court justices, Superior Court judges, and it would replace them with terms of basically good behavior, unless it was decided otherwise by a judicial review commission. It would end retention elections. I will tell you that we just received a letter from 17 former judges who hate this idea. They think that the current system where voters are deciding whether to retain a judge or not is working, and that we shouldn't be tinkering with it because now voters would actually have much less of a voice if 137 passed. So it's a
I got that. Yeah, I think I got that backwards there. This one is actually brought by more of a right-leaning thing trying to protect judges. Once upon a time, it seemed like in the old days, liberals loved judges and Republicans hated judges and thought it was an activist court, but it seems like the tables have turned on this. Is that basically kind of what's the political reality of this?
Exactly. And this one was driven by just a couple of rulings that people didn't like. And hey, let's get that initiative on the ballot and go after them.
All right, moving on. Tipped workers' wages. So this is an interesting one. There's been a lot of talk about an increase in the minimum wage. There's a couple of minimum wage related issues on the ballot. This one would allow tipped workers like waiters, waitresses, those types of people to be paid 25% less, so long as the employer could show that they were still making, I believe it's $2 for every hour worked on top of that. This is an interesting one because there was a flat $18 minimum wage that was removed from the ballot in favor of this one. They kind of put all their marbles behind this one. Tom, what do you think? Is this something that voters will latch onto for the tipped work?
Employers will like it because they're having a low paying a lower wage. As a former, I've never run a restaurant before, but I've certainly managed the payroll before. And anytime you can hold down your payroll costs, it's a feather in your cap. I'm not sure that I'm still puzzling out how I feel about a reward that a customer gives to a worker, how that should factor into a employer's wage considerations. I'm not sure I fully understand how that's supposed to work. If I give somebody a gift who he works for should have no part in it, but that said, I mean, I see the argument because the restaurants have been struggling, especially since COVID. And so so we do have to look at ways that we can help those guys out. Meddling with wages, I'm not sure that's the best way, but we'll see.
Matt, right now, as we're filming this, I'm up at our newspaper in Flagstaff where the minimum wage is about to go to, I believe, $17.85 an hour. And they have seen, I've been talking to the editor and reporters up here, they have seen that restaurants have been struggling and that they've been closing even. And this is on top of what COVID did to them. So really what this would do is right now, an employer can pay a tipped worker $3 less than minimum wage, with the assumption being that they're going to make it up in tips. This, if you voted for Prop 138, what it would do is change that from $3 to 25%. That's going to save the employers a little bit of money, take a little bit of the heat off. I don't know whether it's going to be enough to keep a restaurant open or not, but I think that is the aim.
I think this might be one of the measures that passes the easiest. I think because everybody can appreciate the cost of going out to eat, and also how hard it is to find labor, and also from the point of view of wait staff, is if you work at a good place, you can make a lot more money with tips than just trying to have a straight minimum wage, no matter what it is. So I think there's going to be a lot of support for this. What do you think, Bernal?
Yeah, I'd be concerned that not so much for the customers, but for the employees, that they be allowed to make a decent living. And on its face, it looks like this might end up being better for them.
There's an Associated Press story out today, and it says that more people are eating at home because the prices in supermarkets are leveling off or going down a little bit, and the revenue for restaurants, and they particularly mentioned Olive Garden, and those the income there is going, the revenue there is going down. So fewer people are eating out, and that has to play into this also. Again, you go out for a casual lunch and it costs you, $40, you and a friend. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So I think people are rethinking things. So a lot could play into this.
Okay, moving down the list here. Prop 311 is a $250,000 death benefit for any first responder killed in the line of duty. It kind of seems a little strange to be voting on that at this point, but I've also maybe seen too much true crime to not see this as a sort of spouse kills another spouse for the insurance money tactic. But what is the impetus behind? Does anyone know the impetus behind this, or who's driving it, and what's it all about?
I'm gonna have to plead ignorance on this one. I don't. I haven't heard a lot. Obviously, it's designed to reward people who lost, their lives in the line of duty and whatnot. I don't know all the background on who's pushing for it though.
On this one is that it would establish a $20 fee on every conviction for a criminal offense to help to help pay for it. First of all, good luck getting that money from a criminal, and $20 per is just not going to do it for you. But a little bit of background, we shouldn't leave people with the impression that it's $250,000 or nothing. But because right now there are benefits for people who have lost their lives in the line of service that are out there. And you ask, gosh, why did this suddenly come up now? Other than pandering, I'm not quite sure why, quite honestly.
Because you could just have a life insurance policy. You could have more life insurance if you wanted. You know?
Right, and they probably do, and they probably get good rates on it. I'm guessing as maybe a benefit or something. But please don't believe that if this doesn't pass, that an officer's family is going to go without. Would it make life easier? Oh, absolutely, it would. And if people feel strong about that, you go ahead and vote for it. But I can tell you that it is not going to be paid for by those $20 fees for criminals. It is not going to be paid for that.
And the fact that it's a public safety, I think, is going to put some wind beneath their sail there, and it'll be interesting to see just how people respond. It might be like more of an emotional vote on this one.
Of all the ballot measures, this is one that I've seen the least talk about. I mean, so it's kind of it's sort of there, and this is the first conversation I've had about it so far, and I'm pretty sure that's true widely, because the other ones are getting a lot more attention, like the tips and what have you. So it may sneak up there because it's one of those ones that's a feel good ballot measure. If you're of course we support our cops. Of course we support our firefighters. Yeah, I'll vote for that.
Are you going to say no to surviving families of police officers killed in the line of duty? That's just
but that's the whole point about this. Is I did some digging, and the Federal Public Safety Officers Benefit Program currently provides over $400,000 to surviving families of police officers. The Arizona pension system provides for the families also in different ways. So again, they're not going without. Why this doesn't seem to be correcting a wrong, but yeah, are you going to say no to officers' families? When they've been killed in the line of duty? Maybe it comes down to that.
Yeah, sentimental pick there for sure. Moving on to the next one. Prop 312, property tax refund nuisance enforcement. I didn't really do any reading on this. Does anybody want to jump on that? What that's all about?
This is a really weird one, and I think it stems from a place called The Zone, and that's this notorious area in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix, that was about 15 square blocks, and a bunch of homeless people had taken it over for years, and it was just an awful place to be. The city did not come in and clean it up until things got so bad that they were ordered by a judge to do so. So what this would do is allow people to say, hey, city, you didn't do your job, so I'm going to challenge paying my property taxes, or you're going to give me some money back as a result of it. So this is darn close to ludicrous, because cities rise and fall on that revenue from property taxes, or in our case here, Pima County, and to start allowing homeowners to challenge their payment of that because their cities or counties have not followed through on what they think they should regarding criminal activity is going to cause one heck of a mess in the courts, and it really could damage services offered by these entities. This is just flat out weird.
Yeah, you pretty much echo what I was thinking when I read this thing. It was like, I mean, they were talking about the city not doing its job, and then you're not going to give them money so that it could possibly do its job.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Strange one.
So then moving on, we go into the always murky world of propositions determining criminal punishments, which is always, bound for a court challenge. So this would be the sex trafficking child natural life. So if you have somebody who is convicted of a felony, number 2 felony sex trafficking charge, they would be automatically sentenced to life in prison. Anyone want to jump on this one?
Who wants to say that child sex traffickers should go off without anything but a mandatory life sentence. Well, a lot of people are saying that because they're saying that in some cases you're dealing with teenagers who've just made really stupid decisions, and now you're throwing them into prison for life, and they think that that's way too extreme. Whereas the other side is trying to send that message that our children are not for sale, and that we're going to really clamp down on this. And so, is it too extreme? That's really for the voters to decide. But understand that child sex traffickers typically get pretty stiff sentences. So a mandatory life may not fit in every situation, even though, of course, it's an awful crime.
Yeah, here's a case where you're taking it
really
the
have
hands of the
arguments.
court. And again, we've got checks and balances. Let the courts decide.
Yeah, we've been dealing with this really a lot in Cochise County already with the load car drivers. When they crash and kill somebody, they'll charge them with first-degree murder. That doesn't meet the criteria for what first-degree murder typically is, with like intent and all that. But they do it just out of kind of, people are very emotional about, border-related criminal activity. So they've been throwing the book at these people. A lot of them are teenagers and very young people who made bad decisions. So obviously there's going to be legal challenges to this one. Do we think this one will pass? I mean, just kind of based on the sort of emotional part of it.
It's almost like the first responders thing. Again, it's all emotion.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that if people come in to the ballot box to and have not seen this, they're going to see this and go, gosh, it sounds like a great idea, without really thinking through all the implications. And I'm not saying I'm pro or con on this one. I'm just saying that it's more than meets the eye, and we should really consider that.
Well, there's
Yeah,
costs
that kind of takes us,
associated
that
with
kind of
keeping somebody
dovetails.
in prison for life too, that you got to take into account.
Absolutely.
Not cheap to keep people in prison for life. Moving on to one that kind of goes in with that is the one that gets a lot of attention based off most people know it as HCR 2060. It's Prop 314. That will be the one that basically the show me your papers, bring back ghosts of SB 1070 from 13 years ago. It's back there. And Tom, you pointed out some surveys out there that showed that there is a lot of popularity.
Yeah, we were
for this
talking
bill.
last time, and
What
we were
kicks off
thinking
there,
maybe
Tom, on
that
this one?
voters would not support this because of the extra work, for instance, that it would create for the local law enforcement. And we were talking also, just about the potential racial profiling that could result from it. But I'll tell you what, the polls suggest people are all for it. And I kind of wondered about that because it's being presented as, it's being presented in such a way that makes it sound like, this is going to keep you safe and it's going to keep people from crossing the border illegally. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I suspect not. We haven't figured it out yet. And I don't think this one's going to solve it either.
And you have Governor Hobbs and others out there talking about, as it happened back when there was the talk of SB 1070, of losing conventions and sporting events, and the economic impacts passing something like this would do. Is that something you think that'll resonate with of it? That's sort of like fear of being punished financially from a national perspective versus the emotion of fentanyl and border crossing. Who's going to win that argument?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the same as 1070, that same emotion, because there's so much anti-open border sentiment or hysteria even. And this kind of just fits right into that.
Yeah, I think what this essentially is saying is that the feds, when it comes to border and immigration, are inept. We need, as a state, to take this into our own hands, and that it has, about a half dozen different things that it will do. And like Tom pointed out, it's polling really well, except with local entities, sheriffs and police departments and such. I have not met one officer, I have not met one sheriff, anybody who wants this to go through. It's almost an unfunded mandate of sorts. My guess is that their part of it would largely go ignored, and the other parts would have to be implemented, like the E-Verify program and making it a Class 6 felony if you submit false information.
We don't know what the Fed are going to do either once suppose it passes. So how long is it? Are they going to drag it into court right away? And then how long does
Yeah.
that take? So,
Good point.
I mean, this could be a major waste of money and time before it's all said and done.
Well, and I think this kind of jumps into the other big one that we can skip to here, maybe, is the Abortion Act, Prop 139. From my point of view, just looking at this politically, you know, the Democrats and the left were getting so much momentum behind this, putting a constitutional amendment supporting abortion in there, that the right wing decided to try to get some red meat from their side to gin up support. Do you think that's a fair way of looking at it, or do you think that the 2060 is something that they really want to see enacted?
Boy, to take those two and to compare them like that, I would in private agree with you, but out in front of everybody, I'd say, "Gosh, Matt, you're crazy." But you know what? The fact is, you're probably right. I will say this on Prop 139. This is the right to abortion. It would be enshrined in the state constitution. That people say, "Gosh, this is really going to get a lot of women out there to vote this year," and therefore it would. Everything on the ballot might lean left as a result. Well, I've been talking to a lot of people lately who are planning to go out because and vote because of Prop 139, and they're voting the other way because they don't want to see it go through. So I think there's a lot of assumptions being made that women support abortion rights across the board, and it simply is not the case. So do I think this one will pass? Well, given the number of signatures that they turned in to get it on the ballot, it certainly looks like it has strong support, but it might not be as strong as the supporters think.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about this cause.
Yeah, there was a
this particular abortion or the proposition is being packaged as, you know, this is what women want. This is for protecting women, yada, yada, yada. And yet, without fail, when I talk to somebody who's pro-life, it's usually a woman. I mean, they're more passionate about this cause than anybody I know. So it's really ironic that they're packaging it as something to protect women on the strongest opponents of it are women. So I don't know how it's going to shake out, but we'll see.
You know, I think what's interesting about this is,
I think
and there was a
Matt
poll
put
that
his
came out
finger on
earlier
it
this week.
a couple of episodes again when he said it all comes down to fetal viability, right? Okay, so define that. It gets a little murky too.
And I think from there was a poll that came out last week that showed 58% supporting it, and I think it'll pass with probably by a pretty large margin. But what I think the Democrats might be making a mistake here on by putting all their eggs in this basket is it's kind of like, you know, how they talk about how when the Republicans overturned Roe v. Wade, it was like the dog catching the car. And they're like, oh no, now what do we do? Now you're backpedaling. But I think this kind of goes to Dan's point there too, is if you enshrine it in the Constitution, you've now taken that away as a political tool. So now somebody could go to the polls and they don't like what Carrie Lake thinks about abortion. They want to keep abortion legal. But now they can enshrine it in the Constitution and now go vote for Carrie Lake and any Republican they want to, because it's now off the books. So like the Democrats, by enshrining these things, they're really letting go of their best political issue. And it might work this time, but I don't know about long term.
Great point.
Interesting point.
All right, let's move along here. We are on certainly the longest episode of NewsTalker at this point, but there should be some good clips to cut out of here if nothing else. Yeah, anything else we want to talk about here? We've been through quite a lot of them. Is there anything others people got thoughts on?
Well, Prop 315 is the very last one on regulatory cost. Read that, your mind will go numb, and you'll be asking yourself, why are we deciding this? So, you know what, let's not even take the time to explain it. It's just one of those things where I'm thinking, why is this even on here? So now we've covered them all.
Well, I know Dan, you prepared a nice little
Okay, we'll go around the horn with
voter's guide that we'll be running in a future edition, so readers can be watching for that.
Yes. And so what we've done is we've turned it into English, every one of the props, and then we also gave some background on how they got on to the ballot or what was kind of behind it, kind of the things we've been talking about here. So yeah, that's coming out in our area on October 2nd, but it'll be to everybody before the ballots are mailed out.
Yeah, so we're running ours October 6th, the Sunday before they come out. Yeah, definitely there's going to be a lot of early voting, so you're definitely going to want to read up early. Yeah, we'll definitely be using your proposition analysis in that one too. So check those out. October 2nd in the Green Valley News, and October 6th in the Herald Review in Cochise County. I'm not sure. Manuel, Tom, you guys have got some special election stuff coming up?
I got it coming out the 9th, because we have our election previews coming out then.
Yeah, same here.
All right, fantastic. Well, 13 propositions. We more or less went through them all and pretty much gave, hopefully there was some useful information for people there somewhere along the way. We'll do this again real soon. Make sure to pick up various newspapers in your area and tune into NewsTalker when it's on. I'm Matt Hickman from the Herald Review. Have a great day.